Hi, class. I hope you all are having a good day. So, I am here with you to talk about the writer Gary Soto and his poem Oranges, which was published in 1995. So, I chose this poem because finally we get to read something positive, uplifting, right? When I finish reading this story, sometimes I get like a warm feeling in my heart. Oh, it's such a good story. Okay, so that's one of the reasons why I chose it. I also really think that it is a wonderfully written poem that is rich with imagery. Okay, so imagery is a literary term that refers to a writer using language to appeal to our senses. Okay, so our five senses: touch, taste, smell, sight, and sound. Okay, so as we're reading the poem and thinking about it, look for that. Look for that imagery. Okay, so let me just go ahead and I guess I'll start by saying a little bit about Gary Soto, and then we'll turn to the poem. Close that out. Here we go. Gary Soto. Okay, so there he is. I'm guessing that many of you are probably already familiar with Gary Soto because he's such a popular writer. So he was born in April 1952. He's a poet, he's a novelist, he's a memoirist, and also a very prolific author of children's books. And that's why I'm guessing that you might have heard of him. So he's won a number of prestigious awards, such as the American Book Award, the NEA Fellowship, and also a Guggenheim Fellowship. So he is Mexican American. And as a child, he worked in the fields of the San Joaquin Valley with his parents, who were migrant farmers. So as you probably know, migrant farmers, they move around to wherever the crops are ready to be harvested. That's why the word migrant, right? They move around. It's a very difficult, physically demanding job. And unfortunately, the pay is very low. When Gary Soto was only 5 years old, his father died. And so then, right, he had to work even more to help support the family. He did go to Fresno City College, and then he went to Cal State Fullerton, where he got a bachelor's degree in English. He then went on to UC Irvine, where he was the very first Mexican American student to get a master's degree, and that was in 1976. Okay, you can see he's married. I should also let you guys know that he is an activist for the United Farm Workers. Also, he teaches at UC Berkeley and UC Riverside. Okay, these are some of his books that are written for children, right? You might recognize some of these books. Maybe you read them. These are some of his books for adults, right? So books of poetry. You Kiss by the Book. I can't see the name of the one in the center. I guess just new Gary Soto selected poems. And then A Fire in My Hands. And of course, you probably recognize that line comes from the poem that we're talking about today, Oranges. His memoir of growing up in Fresno, California, called Living Up the Street, won the very prestigious Before Columbus Foundation's American Book Award in 1985. Okay, so pretty cool, right? Let's actually now turn to the poem. And I'm gonna read it. It's a little bit longer, but not that long, right? I'll make it quick. So let me go ahead and pull that up. Doot, doot, doot. No, not that. No, I don't want you. I want the poem. Let's see if I can do this right. Screen. Okay, I gotta find this. Hold on. Okay, I think I figured it out. Okay, so here we go. Here's our poem. Okay, so I'm going to read through it. Oranges. The first time I walked with a girl, I was 12, cold, and weighed down with 2 oranges in my jacket. December, frost cracking beneath my steps, my breath before me then gone, as I walked toward her house, the one whose porch light burned yellow night and day in any weather. A dog barked at me until she came out, pulling at her gloves, face bright with rouge. I smiled, touched her shoulder, and led her down the street across a used car lot in a line of newly planted trees until we were breathing before a drugstore. We entered, the tiny bell bringing a sales lady down a narrow aisle of goods. I turned to the candies, tiered like bleachers, and asked what she wanted, light in her eyes, a smile starting at the corners of her mouth. I fingered a nickel in my pocket, and when she lifted a chocolate that cost a dime, I didn't say anything. I took the nickel from my pocket, then an orange, and set them quietly on the counter. When I looked up, the lady's eyes met mine and held them, knowing very well what it was all about. Outside, a few cars hissing past, fog hanging like old coats between the trees. I took my girl's hand in mine for 2 blocks, then released it to let her unwrap the chocolate. I peeled my orange that was so bright against the gray of December that from some distance, someone might have thought I was making a fire in my hands. Okay, so isn't that I don't mean to use the word cute in a condescending way, but it is very cute. It's very sweet, right? Because it seems to be about the beauty, the innocence of first love. Okay, and love, right? You know, this isn't necessarily love. It's a crush, right? But it's very heartwarming. Okay, and that's what I like. Okay, so let me just kind of like stop sharing my screen for a second. Okay, so what do I want to say about this poem? Well, let's begin by identifying the setting and the point of view and what is important about our setting and our point of view. Okay, well, the very first line of the poem gives us the setting in the sense, the first time I walked with a girl. Okay, so you know, what does that mean, right? It seems to be that it's kind of like a first date, you know, and I'm using that word loosely, right? His first time, you know, outside of the home, like with a girl that he's interested in, right? He wants to hold her hand. He's taking her to the store to buy her something, to treat her to something. So this kind of experience, you know, is something that we maybe all can relate to, right? The very first time you're out in public with somebody that you know, have feelings for, and there's no parents around, right? Sort of this thrilling moment, right? There's also a little bit of angst, anxiety, right? What's going to happen? Okay. We know that it's December, right? Because I think Gary Soto does a great job establishing this juxtaposition between cold and warmth. Okay. So it's a cold December day, right? He brings up their breath, you know, multiple times, right? Why does he do that? Well, if it's cold and you're breathing your hot breath, you can actually see it. You know, so again, sensory details, right? His use of imagery, and they're, you know, they're actually going to the drugstore, this public place. Okay. Now we know that the story, we can see, uses I, so it is first person. Okay, and who is our narrator? Well, we know because he tells us he's 12. He's a 12-year-old boy, right? And what does he have in his pockets, right? He has 2 oranges and a nickel. Now, think about, right, the poem's called Oranges, so that gives us some insight. That's important, right? But that the way his perception, his thoughts about these oranges changes throughout the course of the poem, right? So initially we see these oranges in his pocket. It's like a burden. Like, they're kind of big and you're only 12, you're a small child, you've got these oranges in your pocket. He doesn't, really seem to be very excited about these oranges, right? They're weighing him down. Okay, now at the end of the poem, we'll see that his feelings about the orange seem to change. Okay. So point of view, right? This first person, and I feel like Gary Soto uses that first person to establish intimacy with the audience. Okay, we recognize and we feel affinity with the subject, right? This boy walking with a girl for the first time. Okay. Now, how do the narrator's thoughts about the oranges change? Well, like I said, initially he views it as a burden, right? But by the end of the poem, we see the oranges are extremely valuable, right? Because that is how he is able to purchase the chocolate for the girl. Okay, so, right, and that is only possible due to the kindness of this salesperson, right? When he puts the orange on the counter, it becomes clear when they make eye contact, right, that he doesn't have the 10 cents. He only has 5 cents in the orange. So basically, he's using the orange to barter, right, to trade for this chocolate bar. Right. So this sales lady's kindness enables him to avoid embarrassment, right? He wouldn't have to say in front of the girl, oh, sorry, I can't buy you this chocolate bar because I only have a nickel. That would be very embarrassing on a first date. Right. So instead, like this silent moment, right? That's the climax of the poem, I think, right? Because we're kind of thinking, oh, God, what's going to happen? But that the salesperson like takes the orange and he gets the chocolate bar. Okay. So then at the end of the poem, when he's, peeling the orange and she's opening up the chocolate, right? Again, there's this contrast, right? And let me pull it up again so we can actually look at the language. Because we see at the end, right, that this orange is so bright against the gray of December, right? That it looks like he's making a fire in his hands. Okay, so again, this contrast, this juxtaposition between the warmth versus the cold, right? So what was cold in the poem? The weather, the frost, right? The external environment, the December day. What is warm? Well, the girl's house. Remember, he talks about the porch light that's always burning bright, right? It's warm. Her eyes are also warm and bright. They're holding hands, that's warm. And then the orange at the end of the poem, it looks like a fire. Okay, and what does that symbolize? Well, possibly the boy's feelings. Okay, and you can see my notes that I have written in the book, right? That becomes, right, a symbol at the end of the poem, right? A symbol of the spark of romance, right? Love, affection, right? That now exists between them, right? Fire is life-giving. We need fire. Okay, so peeling that orange. And so it's kind of a symbol of the potential that he holds within him. Okay, he has overcome the cold, and he has also overcome his, his personal insecurities. Right, it is successful. He gets the chocolate for the girl, and it seems as though then he appreciates the orange. Okay, so a beautiful poem. I once had a person, somebody who I really admired and respected a great deal, who I was talking about this poem with, and he said something that I always remember because I thought it was very interesting. So he said, "Oh, I don't think that sounds like a very happy ending after all, because right, he exchanged an orange, right, a piece of fruit, something natural and healthy, right, for a piece of chocolate." Right, this processed, high fructose corn syrup, in a package. Why would you trade an orange for a piece of chocolate? And like I said, I always remember that because I thought, wow, I never really thought of it that way. Maybe, maybe some of you are thinking of it that way too. I feel like the way Gary Soto describes it, it's a very positive, ending to the poem. Well, anyway, I hope you enjoy reading this as much as I do, and I look forward to reading your thoughts on our class discussion board. So that's it for today. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.